In this video, we're going to learn about self-paced courses in Schoology. We're going to discuss the purpose and the function of self-paced courses. We'll talk about how to create them, and then we'll also view the student experience. This video will be going back and forth between teacher view and student view so that we can see the impact that the student completion rules have on the student experience. This video will note this on the bottom left-hand corner by saying teacher view when we're in teacher view and student view when we see the student view. Self-paced courses or self-paced lessons can be created by the teacher so that students follow a particular path of learning. This is accomplished by the teacher by using what Schoology calls student completion rules. So we can apply rules to folders or to certain assignments, and students have to perform a certain action before they can go to the next assignment. So let's go ahead and set some student completion rules and see how it impacts the student experience. I've reorganized the content we've been working with so far into there, and I've added some content here so I can show you how these rules work. So let's say, for example, we have this folder here. This is maybe Unit 1 or Lesson 1, and it contains the contents here. And as a teacher, I want to ensure that my students don't go through and skip and click randomly through these assignments. I want them to follow an order, and I want them to complete these activities or view certain activities before they go to the next activity. So I see I have a discussion here. I have a couple resources that are here. I have 2 assignments, and then I have 2 assessments we've been working with. So I'm going to set some rules, and we'll see what that looks like. I'm going to go ahead and open up this Lesson 1 folder. Once I'm in this folder, I'm going to select Options, and I'm going to select Student Completion. I'm going to check mark that requirements must be completed in a sequential order. That's what I want my students to do. And now what I can do is I can add a requirement for each one of those activities that they complete in that sequence. So I'm going to add a requirement, and for my discussion activity, members must or students must view the item, either post a comment or reply, or score at least in order to move on to the next item. So you have a couple choices here, and these choices change depending upon the type of activity that we have selected over here. This is a discussion, so I'm just going to say that they need to post or comment or reply in order to progress to the next activity. So I'm going to go ahead and save those changes. Okay, I now see a student progress button that's here, and it's grayed out right here to remind me that I have applied a rule here that students must post or comment before they go to the next one. I can add some more rules, and I'm going to go ahead and do that for all the items that are in here. I'm going to add a requirement, and I can choose any of these. These ones are resources, so I want to make sure that for this resource here, I want to make sure the student at least views the item before they move on. When we have things like resources, these were links and files that we uploaded. This is the only option we have here. Since they're not turning anything in, we just want to ensure that they at least looked at it before they move on. And so for these resources here, these links and these uploaded files, they just can view it. And then I'm going to say for this assignment here, this is an actual assignment, they must at least make a submission, or I can set score at least. One of the things you need to be aware of, if you select score at least, and they turn this in, and you haven't graded it yet, they can't progress. So if it's ungraded, like if I select this one here and the student turns it in and I say they have to have at least a 75 out of 100, well, if they turn this assignment in and they're ready to move on, but you haven't graded it yet, they're not going to be able to move on. So you need to make that determination. I'm going to select more appropriately, at least they make a submission here before they can move on. And I'm going to do the same thing with this assignment. They need to make a submission before they can move on. And when we get to the sample test and this assessment, let's take a look here at what options we have. So the sample test, I'm going to say that they need to score at least a 2 out of 3. Maybe this is a point in your teaching and you're learning that you don't want students to progress beyond this if they haven't reached a certain proficiency level. And I'm going to add a requirement for the assessment. So again, if you are requiring the score at least option, this means you may need to be on your toes a little more about grading so that you can give students the feedback that they need in order to progress, or the feedback that they need in order to revise and regrade or rescore or retake one of these assessments so they can progress through the activities. I'm going to go ahead and save our changes now. And we notice that we see what the action required for each of these activities here that I have specified in the rules themselves. Now we're going to switch to the student view and see how it impacts the student experience. So I'm here in the student view now, and I notice that in this unit or lesson right here, notice that the only option available for me as a student is the discussion. I can't click anything here. I can see it, which is nice because I know as a student, I know what's coming next, but I can't access any of this content until I perform the action required by this discussion. In this case, it was I have to post. So if I'm a student, I'm going to go ahead and click this. I'm going to post my response to this discussion. And now when I go back to Unit 1, Lesson 1, I see that posted comment reply. I'm good to go. Now the next one is available to me. Likewise, if I go back to the top level of the course and I expand the folder, I now have this next one available to me, and I still can't do these ones. The action for this one was that I had to view the item. So I viewed the item here. This is the item. If I go back as a student, now I see that the next one's available to me because I viewed this previous item. So this is a nice way to sequence the learning and structure it in a way that you want your students to follow. One of the things students also can do is you see that there's a student progress button here. If I click student progress, it gives me kind of a checklist of what I've done so far and tells me a percentage. So for Unit 1 in Lesson 1, I'm about 25% done. And these are all in progress. This is the work I still have to do as part of those completion rules before I can move on. Let's wrap up by heading back to the teacher view. A couple of things to note about student progress. Your students may get stuck at times. Schoology has reported this as a little bit of a hiccup in their coding. The way that you're going to get around this is to get in the habit of clicking the student progress icon here. And I can check the progress of all my students on this unit. So not only is this a nice way to get a top level understanding about where my students are, but also this recheck student progress button. And there's a prompt here that says if you're having issues with completion rules, you can force the system to recheck all student activity. So the system gets behind sometimes and gets snagged up in some of these rules. And so all we need to do is recheck student progress. Students will refresh and they should be good to go. So if your students are stuck behind an activity that they feel that they have completed, simply recheck that student progress and that will reinitiate the system and get things back rolling. So a good best practice would be to periodically check this and then recheck student progress. Another thing you may want to do is, since we have all of these folders here, I can do student completion rules by folders if you want to. So I can set student completion rules to make all folders sequential, and they must complete the activities within these folders before they progress to the next folder. That's another type of kind of top level self-pacing you can. If we apply the student completion rules at the folder level and all folders and then assignments within here have student completion rules, then basically what we've created is a self-paced course, which is the course that you guys are in right now. The Schoology 100 course, we have completion rules set for all folders and assignments. So you notice that as you're going through here, you can't access content until you've completed an action required by that either discussion, assignment, resource, or folder.